Thank you, Steve. First of all, it's an honor to be part of this internal Israeli debate. I come from a distance, a little bit like the French philosopher, historian Alexis de Tocqueville, with an effort to try to see things perhaps with a little bit of clarity from a distance that are more challenging when you're actually in the situation in which Israel finds itself. And the situation in which Israel finds itself has been indicated thus far in this panel is very challenging. It's a region in disarray. The Middle East that some of us thought we understood over the past 50, 60, perhaps even 100 years is in a process of fundamental reorientation, and some of the givens and the known factors turned out not to be given and not to be known. And so for a country like Israel, in which not only is security a paramount consideration and should be a paramount consideration, but where the vulnerabilities are as great as they are, it is a time to sit back and wonder what is the right policy. To move forward with trying to seize opportunities, to sit back and wait to see how things work themselves out, or to move, as Dory Gold just suggested, more modestly. I'm also happy that Dory introduced the Jerusalem Zoo into this conference, the foxes and the doves, because I want to talk about the ostrich and the eagle. One of the questions that has to be raised in this context is whether or not an approach in which one simply sits and waits it out, as this panel is called, or can be described as the ostrich sticking one's head in the ground, makes any sense. An ostrich, of course, tries to avert danger by not looking at it and not trying to understand it. But we also know that the ostrich, by doing so, exposes a certain part of its anatomy which at a minimum might be subject to shrapnel, which we've had some discussion of that in the last couple of days. And so it's a real wonder whether or not the ostrich approach in this case is going to make any sense. You have, on the other hand, the eagle that soars high above the fray, actually preys on its targets from above, and looks for opportunities in which it can secure its prey. Now, we're in a situation, I think, as Ambassador Rabinovich suggested, in which Israel's ability to influence the politics and dynamics of change in the Arab world is exceedingly limited and is mostly affected by what Israel says as opposed to what Israel can do. In fact, Israel's policies with respect to its rhetorical response to the Arab uprisings thus far, I think has been quite enlightened. Very careful public diplomacy, very careful consideration of how things will be heard in this neighborhood, and the understanding that there is a degree of magnification of what's said in Jerusalem as it's heard in Tehran, Damascus, Cairo, and so forth. But there is an issue, as was just introduced, there is an issue in which Israel not only can speak, but can do. And that, of course, is its dispute with the Palestinians. Now, I found out in the last few days that there's a name for what I have been over the years. Your defense minister called some of us solutionists. I think in a very negative way, suggesting that there's something wrong in the belief that there is a solution to every problem. I happen to believe that there's a solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. And even though we haven't found the key to unlock final status, in fact, the more we understand the conflict resolution process, the more we need to understand that these two peoples, Israeli and Palestinian peoples, have narrowed the gaps substantially on every issue that they have discussed. We have failed for a variety of reasons to reach a final settlement, and that's too bad. But it doesn't mean that this is a moment to start taking baby steps, because this may be a moment, as this region presents great dangers, where an Israeli initiative, where Israel understanding that the fire inside its own house needs to be put out even as the fire in the neighborhood is being dealt with, may be the smartest policy to pursue. Now, that does not mean unnecessary or careless risks. The idea of borders, secure, recognized, and defensible, has been part of the calculation in the search for peace for many years. Because secure and recognized is as important components of Israel's security as military defensibility. You've had two examples of peace treaties with Arab neighbors, and both of those peace treaties have provided Israel with a degree of security that you did not have before those treaties, because you ended up with peace partners, Arab parties willing to sign on the bottom line that they would be responsible for implementing the provisions of the treaty as Israel is responsible for implementing the provisions of a treaty. So yes, there should be defensible borders, but they should also be secure and recognized, which means that those borders have to be negotiated. And so the idea of starting, perhaps, a negotiation with security and with borders, giving Israel a definition of its state's borders for the first time in 65 years, may be, as President Obama suggested in May 2011, at least a way back into this peace process. And to some degree, not entirely, but to some degree, it may be to Israel's advantage to take the initiative rather than sit back and wait. Now, Steve, you asked particularly about the question of American intervention in Syria. And as you know, there has been a major debate in the United States over whether or not this is a conflict in which the United States should once again use military force or military involvement to help resolve it. I think you know in this country better than almost anyone else that the issue of conflict fatigue has affected the United States. We have had 150,000 boots on the ground in this region for the last 12 years. And we have an American public that wants to know to what degree concrete, achievable American interests are at stake. Now, you have a terrible civil war, it's taken a terrible humanitarian toll, but that debate is still not finalized in the United States, and therefore, the administration is tiptoeing into this question without jumping in full body, because we're not sure where the American interest lies, and I think Itamar got it right. The question really is going to be whether or not a devil we know, and it is a devil, is better than a devil that may emerge from the outcome of the overthrow of the first devil. And so the United States is being very cautious with respect to Syria, and I think we're likely to see the continuation of that caution in the period ahead. Thank you.